Thank you for tuning in to Pharaoh's Get the Facts from Communication and Media Arts High School in Detroit. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of our content. You can also find us on YouTube at CMA Pharaohs TV. Now, prepare for a conversation with our students and their special guests. And remember, CMA, it's not just a name, it's a mindset.
Hi, my name is Cheyenne Fouché, and I'm here with
Anaya Bembry.
And today we're going to talk about financial literacy with Tasha Journeys.
Good morning, everyone.
Okay. So my first question is, how did you figure out to create a stable budget to live weeks at a time in different places after you quit your job?
I first had to look up how much it would cost. Like, biggest expense was going to be Airbnb. So if you don't know, I traveled the world for a year. I went to 19 countries, 5 continents in a little over a year. So how I decided to do that was I broke down a cost. So my biggest expense was going to be, where would I be living, right? I didn't know. So I looked up Airbnb, hotel costs to get an idea. And then I watched a lot of YouTube videos, social media stuff to get an idea of how much food would cost and different things like that. So overall, I've always been really good with my money. So it just took me about a year to get everything like finalized and together once I made the decision.
Okay. And my question for you would be, what were your most difficult challenges of saving your money for these trips?
Honestly, it wasn't any challenges. So I have no problem telling people I'm on a budget and saying no. I think that's the biggest problem. You know, when I first graduated college, this was a long time ago. But when I first graduated college, I graduated college with student loan debt. So I graduated with about $55,000 of student loan debt, and I was determined to pay that off. So I have no problem telling nobody it's not in my budget. So it really wasn't hard. I do travel a lot before I left, like domestically, but it wasn't hard for me to stay focused. I'm pretty disciplined.
Okay.
Can you give us any financial tips when traveling outside the country?
Yes. Make sure that you have for teenagers and if you're going with your parents, you want to make sure you have a checking account that allows you to take out currency anywhere without any extra fees. So that's what I did. I didn't travel around the world with a stack of money or anything like that. I had a special checking account where I could take out money. So when I was in Japan, I was able to take out the yen. When I was in Thailand, I took out different money. When I was in Ghana, I was able to take out their respective currency with using my checking account that I had. So that's first and foremost, and understand conversion rates. So our USD goes far in the other countries. So what we spend on a month of rent here could be 6 months of rent in Thailand. It could be 4 months of rent in Kenya. So our dollar goes a long way here. So we are very privileged to earn the US dollar that we have. So the biggest thing I would say financially is just know about exchange rates and different currencies that you're going to use when traveling.
Okay. What motivated you to teach the financial community on YouTube to do these things?
So I have a nonprofit called Financial Garden, and I started that like 10 years ago because I was a math tutor. And whenever I gave examples about money when explaining math to 5th graders or 6th graders, they never knew what I meant. So I decided to start volunteering and teaching young kids about financial literacy. And so when I was in schools like this, teaching younger kids and kids like young teens like yourself, I noticed that the teachers was taking notes. So the teachers was learning from me as well as the students. So I decided to make a YouTube channel to teach finance to everybody.
What was the biggest cultural shock you experienced when traveling?
I would say the biggest was when I went to Egypt. So that was a culture shock just because Cairo is extremely busy and chaotic. So that was a culture shock for me. But I would say the biggest culture shock overall was when I was in Africa, just because you blend in, but there's differences, right? So I don't speak the language. So that was hard for me to get adjusted because I went to Africa after spending time in Europe. So I was in Paris, I went to Spain and stuff like that. And so I was happy to go to Africa because I'm like, okay, I'm not going to stick out as much as I would, like pretty much like being here. It's just everyone's going to look like me. But the hard thing was like people coming up to me thinking that I was from that country and not being able to speak the language. So that was hard.
So this is a really kind of funny question. It's kind of funny, but it's also very important. How did you stack up this money? Did you work your job and like did you have a plan from the beginning to, you know, save up this money while you were working and use it now?
Yes. So I put myself through college. So I took out student loans. I had credit cards off survival, not because I was taking spring break trips or anything like that or shopping sprees. That was not a part of my story. I had to just look out for myself. So I already knew. So I when I was in college, I picked economics was my major. And so I picked a career that was going to pay me out the gate. So I went with accounting. So I started off in my 20s making good money. So I was just always focused on getting out of debt and just making my money work for itself. So I do have real estate. I have 4 properties. So that helped me along the way. So after I paid off my debt, I started buying property. Before Financial Garden became a nonprofit, it was a for-profit, so that was another income stream for me. But being an accountant, I'm a CPA, so I did corporate accounting, and then I would do stuff on the side. So I had different streams of income to help me be more disciplined as far as how I spent my money, but I always was like living and doing the things I wanted to do before I decided to travel the world. So I was going to concerts. My friends are scattered across the U.S., so I was going to Cali all the time, Atlanta all the time, New York all the time. So I've always been able to find that balance, but I work hard.
Where would you like to spend your next travels?
I want to move to Kenya, so I want to explore East Africa a little bit more. And aside from that, just like not just me living somewhere, because that's ultimately what I want to do. I want to split my time between living here in the U.S. and start some businesses out in Kenya. I want to go to the Philippines just on some fun stuff, like take my mom there. And I would like to, it was some other fun stuff, it just slipped my mind, but I do like to do different vacations and stuff with my friends. But top of the list, explore East Africa. And I want to go back to Greece because it was beautiful. I want to do the islands a little bit more. I only went to Santorini.
Okay, so this is a unrelated question to your financial journeys. But your friend Tanae, when in the Kenya video, did she end up staying in one of those apartments that you put in the video?
No, she ended up, she picked somewhere else. So it wasn't any of those 3. That's a good question. We did like a house hunter style video, apartment style video. She didn't pick any one of those, and she actually relocated from Kenya to Tanzania. We say Tanzania, but in Africa they say Tanzania. So she's actually living there. So that's a country right next to Kenya.
How would you compare living in Kenya, Australia, or America? Like, how would you compare the circumstances, the treatment? How would you compare it?
Australia is just like the U.S. I always joke and say it's the United States cousin. Literally, I felt like I was back in the U.S. So one thing about me being gone for a year, a little over a year, I flew my mom out every 3 to 4 months. So when she came out there, it was towards the end of my travels. And so I had been out of the U.S. for a while. And when I touched down in Australia, I was like freaking out just because I was able to see signs in English. So when you're traveling the world, you don't see English a lot. You see Spanish, you see Thai, you see whatever that language is. Like Kenya, one of their national languages is English, but you're going to see signs like the sign I'm looking at ahead, that's all in English. But I got so used to seeing everything in a foreign language, the streets being smaller, people driving on a different side of the road. So when I was in Australia, I was like, oh, I feel like I'm back in the U.S. Just the way the buildings look, how the dollar, it's an Australian dollar, but it was a dollar. They use states. It was literally just like the U.S. to me, just with a little bit of accent from everyone. And you said Australia, comparing it, felt like the U.S. And the other question was, what other country was it?
Kenya.
Kenya. Nairobi is where I stayed, so that is like their major city. So that was very similar to being in a like heavily populated area. It's a neighborhood in Kenya that's called the Westlands. Westland. I want to say Westland, but they call it the Westlands. And I felt like I was in Buckhead, Atlanta. Like the way the red dirt, just the architecture of buildings. I'm very detailed when I travel. I look at how the trees look, how the slopes are. I really felt like I was in Atlanta. All the restaurants was in English and stuff. The landscape literally looked like I was in Atlanta. But outside of that, where I stayed, different parts, I felt like I was in Detroit because, 7 Mile, you have a lot of car washes or cleaners. It would just really look like you was on 7 Mile somewhere in certain parts of Kenya. And then certain parts, you were like, okay, this is definitely not somewhere I've been. So I was able to identify different parts in different countries that felt like home. And I would say the difficult thing was just the driving in Kenya is insane. They drive a little crazy over there, and the traffic is a lot.
So from what I've seen, you've been to Kenya, you've been to Austria, you've been to all these different places. Mm-hmm. Have you ever been worried about safety?
Not any more than I would be in the U.S. So I think that we are brainwashed in this country to think that we are safe, like all times. And if you go outside the U.S., oh my God, it's going to be unsafe, right? I'm not saying y'all saying that, but that's literally like the main stake when I meet other people from the U.S. traveling. I use the same street sense I would use when I'm maneuvering here in Michigan or wherever. I would say the exception would be just cultural differences. When I was in Egypt, get out my personal space. Like, don't come up on me like that. And it would be times where, like, men, it's mostly, I don't know if it's their religion or whatever, but they feel like they can be in your space and just keep hounding you. And when I say hounding you, to buy something. So clearly they knew that me and my mom were not from Egypt. We didn't look like we were from there, and they can tell when you're American. And when you are American in certain countries, all they see you is a dollar sign, because like I said earlier, our U.S. dollar goes a long way. So even when I was in Kenya, it would be frustrating in different countries because they hear the accent and they think, oh, I'm about to ask you for money and tell you a sob story, but they're trying to sell you stuff. So it was annoying always somebody like being like this close to you is, doing like, you would be like, back up, you know what I mean? So that was a little different.
So basically, like your neighborhood CD man that you see somewhere at a store, or like the perfume guy.
Yeah. So and just imagine that perfume guy like being all of and just following you around, and you tell him like, no, thank you or whatever. Then you just gotta pop off sometime. So that happened to me in a few countries where I had to just like stand my ground because I was by myself, and they were like, oh, well, I'm sorry. Like, yeah, now all of a sudden you can speak English, you know what I mean? So like I said, it's nothing different from being really here in the U.S. and just you got to be diligent. So nothing happened to me where I felt like, oh my God, I have to go back home. I just feel unsafe.
Is there one place you haven't traveled?
I haven't. I want to go to Maldives, so I haven't been there. It's a few countries. I'm like drawing a blank right now, but it's a few countries that I haven't been to that I want to. Like I haven't been to Amsterdam. There's a few countries in Europe I want to visit, and several countries in Africa that I want to visit that I didn't get a chance to see while I was traveling.
So you've been to Egypt, which you've said quite a few times.
Yeah.
Specifically, I heard you say Cairo.
Yeah.
But did you go see any of the pyramids?
Yeah, so the pyramids are right outside of Cairo. So I flew my mom out to Egypt. So that was my mom's first time coming to Africa. So that was exciting that I was able to give her that experience. And so we climbed in the pyramids. You can actually go in the pyramids. It was hot and it was a lot. It was dark, and we went in there, and it was really nothing to see once you go in there. It's like you gotta like pretty much crawl to get inside the pyramids, but that was fun. And then we went to Luxor. So that's a few hours outside of Cairo. So I went to two different cities in Egypt.
Have you visited any Pacific islands like Hawaii?
Yes, I went to Hawaii like 5 years ago. I'm gonna say my mom a lot. So one thing is like once I really so like I said, I put myself through college and I was very disciplined with my money. And my mom and my dad, they're Marines. And so my mom joined the Marines because she wanted to travel the world, but she didn't get the opportunity. So since I'm able to do it, I take my mom a lot of places. So I took my mom to Hawaii for Mother's Day 5 years ago. So we went to two islands there. We went to the main island and in Kauai. So Hawaii is a lot of different islands. So I took her to two islands there.
That reminds me of my relationship with my mom. I love my mom.
Yeah, I love your mama.
That too.
I had a question first.
Okay.
So before you take these trips, you make, or let's just say while you're on these trips, do you make a total budget of how much you're going to spend on groceries, or do you just like go out, you're going shopping, and you're like, well, that's really unnecessary, I'm not going to buy that? Like, do you feel that way?
Yes, I had a set budget for different countries. I went over budget like the first few months because I was so excited to be like actually doing this. It takes a lot of guts to like leave your career and then go travel the world by yourself. And so I only had a carry-on and a shoulder bag. So I couldn't buy a lot of stuff. But where I overspent was just on experiences. Like I love museums and things like that. And I really like nice restaurants. So I kind of went overboard with that. So I overspent when I was in Europe. But to answer your question, yes, I did. So I knew that like when I was in France and when I was in Spain and like Greece, I knew that I was going to spend more money in those countries. So I had a set budget for housing and I had a set budget for buying groceries. And I overspent. And what I did was I found lower cost countries to balance it out. So Thailand was cheap, which is why I ended up going back there 3 times because I'm like, ooh, I gotta get my money back, right? Because I already booked my mom's stuff to come out. You know what I mean? And so the worst that happened if I overspent was that I would have to come back home early, which I was not trying to do. So what I did was when I overspent, it was usually for, like I said, experiences on restaurants. And so I knew, like if I knew right now in April if I overspent, let's say I had $3,000 for the month, and week 2 I'm at $2,000. It's like, okay, I only had $3,000, so I'm gonna overspend. You know what I mean? So I would just know 2 months out from now I got to change my route. So to go to a lower cost country.
Growing up, was it your plan to travel the world?
No, it really wasn't. I got the idea when I was in college because I met one of my good friends. She was from South Africa, and I had another friend that was from the Bahamas. So I met a lot of students that were not from the U.S., and it just got me curious on like what was their day-to-day like. And so it's different from y'all, but like when I was growing up, on what I saw on TV, the commercials was like they show Africa being poor, and that's really what I thought it was, just like dirt roads and just being ignorant. I didn't know. So when I was in college, my friend Angelique, she's from South Africa, I was like, what is it like over there? You know, I thought she was really struggling, and she was like, no. So that planted the seed for me to want to go to South Africa first. And then I'm like, I didn't know what I didn't know, so it just made me curious about traveling. So I didn't have it as a kid, but when I was in college, that's where it came.
Is there anything that you have like brought from Greece or Egypt that was just like substantially big and you just
So I will say I did send stuff back with my mom. So shipping items, I did ship some stuff to certain family members while I was traveling because I couldn't take it with me. So I did send different packages back. Like with Egypt, my mom came there, so it was a lot of stuff I bought and I sent it back with her. So I did buy some artwork and different like souvenirs that I sent back with her. But I'm trying to think, like when I went to South Africa a few years ago, I bought a lot of artwork and I still have that today. Like this bracelet I got from South Africa, these earrings I got from Kenya. So I would buy jewelry to like make me remember different places that I've went.
Are there any tips you would like to give to the crowd?
I would say, don't be afraid to do stuff on your own, because I always had to step out of my bubble, like with my friends and everything. So even in college, like graduating from college, I had student loan debt. Everybody did. And I wasn't able to do a lot of things like go travel immediately after college or go shopping and go do different things because I was so focused on paying my debt off. And everybody thought that was stupid. When I bought my first rental property, it was like, how you gonna do this? You don't know this, you know what I mean? But I just had to listen to myself. So my biggest advice would just be listen to like your gut, your inner voice, even if even if that goes against the grain with you and your friends and what your family may say.
Sorry.
You're fine.
Okay, so out of all of the places you've been, what might be your favorite place?
That's a hard question. I have favorite places for different reasons. From a picturesque type of thing, like just want to do photo shoots all day, that's definitely Greece. And I would say Italy, Venice, and Greece for sure. And I really did like Paris was really pretty. So I like, for the aesthetics of all of those, I would say that. But from a feel like home would be Kenya. I said that a million times. And Thailand was with ease. So I would say that. And Croatia is another spot that's in Europe that was really nice. So I would say those would be my top. It's hard.
I know this might be a hard question, but did you deal with any discrimination or racism while you were traveling, mainly in Europe?
Yeah, I did. And it was similar to here, where you may feel like you get the looks or you may feel uncomfortable. I would say the last few years is where it got blatant, where people may actually say certain things that I'm not going to say. But in Europe, it would be just kind of like follow you around, that type of thing, like similar to here if you're in the store shopping, you know what I mean, in certain places. Because they do have a lot of African immigrants, and so they thought me and my cousins and my friend that was there when we went, we were African and not African American. And as soon as they heard the accent, they switched up. And they were like, oh, basically because they were like, they see the dollar sign. So it was like, oh, you're not one of them, you got money. They didn't say that, but that was implied. So I experienced a lot of that in Spain and in France. But like I said, I want to go back to, it wasn't to the point where I'm like, I never want to go back to those places. And then I faced discrimination while in Africa, just from the sense of, again, going back to being American, everyone thinks you're rich. So they feel like you don't have any cares, you don't have anything to complain about, and that gets very frustrating. So I can't think of the languages now off the top of my head. I'm having like brain fog, but I would say it would be frustrating being in different countries. Like I understand Tree in Ghana, and so they didn't know I understood that because my roommate in college was Ghanaian. So I would just say it in English, like I know what you're saying. They were like, what? Like I can't speak it, but I do understand it. And I was surprised that I was able to remember certain things from college. So that can be frustrating when that's not necessarily racism, but discrimination, because they're taxing you, the price is going up because you're American. So that was what I faced constantly, and that did become mentally draining when you're trying to connect with people and you have to figure out who's genuine, who's not, who's just trying to look at you as a dollar sign.
So, does anybody in the audience have any questions for Miss Tasha Journeys about anything financially, any travel? Go ahead.
Sorry, you said you went to Italy, right?
Yes.
What city?
I went to Rome and I went to Venice. So I like Venice more. Than Rome was it was a little disappointing, but I like Venice.
Do you have any future travel plans?
Yeah. Yeah, I do plan to move outside the U.S. and split my time. I want to spend half the year here, like being come back here for Detroit summers, and then that's pretty much it. And then I want to live. I don't want to be here for the winters at all or any cold weather. So I do plan to start investing in Kenya, different businesses in Kenya and or Thailand. I'm just still trying to figure that out. So definitely plan to travel and explore East Africa more, but I don't plan to live full time in the U.S. anymore after next year.
And what was your most memorable moment?
Kiss somebody.
I couldn't hear him.
Say it again.
I said, what was your most memorable moment or outside of America?
My favorite thing.
Your memorable moment in America.
A memorable moment is to Ghana. Bringing in New Year's Eve was like perfect. It was so much fun. And then I went snorkeling in the Great Barrier Reef, which is something I did want to do when I was a kid. When you was asking me like, did I want to travel the world when I was a kid? No, but I love reading books, and one of my favorite books was about the Great Barrier Reef. So it was surreal that I was actually able to do that. So that was the most. I got one more, and then the pyramids with my mama. So I gotta have 3. I can't just pick one.
Comma.
It was great to hear about your journeys, your travels, and all these adventures. I got a bunch of kids here who are just starting their financial journey now. Could you give them a few pointers so they can possibly get to the level you're at now of getting to take these adventures? Because not everybody makes the right decisions to get there.
Yes, the first thing I was saying was I went to school. I put myself through school, and I knew that I was gonna have student loans. So that could be the biggest hindrance for you living a certain type of life, especially in your 20s, which seems so far away right now, but I promise y'all it's going to be here faster than you know it. So just understand what student loans are, if you know what it would take to pay them back, and understand that even if you decide to leave school for whatever reason, you do have to pay those loans back. So I would just say be very, very diligent about understanding your credit score, and how to make that work for you. That's the most important advice I can give you, because like I said, I put myself through school and I was able to sustain because I did have good credit. And when I had an emergency that I didn't have savings for, I was able to put it on my credit card, but I knew I had to pay it off. So that was the biggest building block for me.
So has the current situation, or like the economic, or like the political situation of a country, ever stopped you from going there? Or like say, for instance, have you ever wanted to visit Haiti or Ukraine or something like that? Has that ever stopped you from going there?
Yeah, so different countries have different security ratings. So I would watch that. So I think they rated level 1 through 5. So I almost didn't go to Bali because it was Bali, another country that the U.S. ranked them a different rating. So if it's out of the yellow zone, if it goes to red, I'm not going to visit that country. So I would pay attention to that before I booked my flight when I was traveling. So that's a really good question.
Well, it was really nice talking to you. It was really nice to meet you. I enjoy asking you questions. You have a really nice personality. I'm sure they liked asking you questions.
Thank you.
You are a very wonderful guest.
Thank you.
And that's
And very entertaining at that.
Thank you.
And the close at, I don't know, how do we close it? Thank you all for watching.
Bye.